Morning laid a pale gold ribbon across the cliffs, and Greywatch Manor woke to it like a sleeper turning toward a warm window. The sea below did not roar. It breathed. It rose and fell in long, gentle lines, as if the world had learned a slower language in the night. Elias Hart stood on the front steps with a brush in his hand and paint on his sleeve. He had been up since first light, sanding the old door, mending the small cracks that time had written into it. He worked with a quiet joy that surprised him. Work felt different now. Every nail he set, every board he planed, seemed to loosen an old knot inside the house. The village bell rang once, then again, clear, steady, pleased with itself. Down the path, smoke drifted from the cottages. Someone laughed, someone sang. The sound made Elias smile. He turned to look at the view. The grass on the headland shone with dew, each drop catching a bit of sky. Gulls dipped low, then rose in slow arcs. The lighthouse blinked its patient eye, though the day was bright. Inside the house, the piano waited, its lid open. In the study, an empty wooden box sat on a shelf between a book of old maps and a jar of rose petals that smelled faintly of Elowen when the lid was lifted. Elias did not lift it often. He had learned to leave some things at rest. He set his brush aside and went in to wash. When he came back, he paused by the old clock he had repaired the night before. Now it ticked with a strong, even voice. It sounded like a heart that had chosen to keep beating. He sat at the piano. He did not play Elowen's tune. He played his own, soft, slow, with a line that rose like the tide and fell like a breath released. The notes drifted over the cliffs, and a breeze brought them back again, as if the sea was listening. By mid-morning, voices sounded on the path. 3 villagers stood at the gate, Mrs. Penfold with her always kind eyes, Thomas, a boy of 12, and Marius the fisherman, tall and seamed by the salt. "Mr. Hart," Mrs. Penfold said, her smile a burst of sunlight, "we brought bread, still warm. And a pot of jam," Thomas added quickly. Marius nodded once. "We came to see if the place would take kindly to visitors again." "It will," Elias said, and he meant it. They ate at the long table with sunlight on their hands, speaking of small things. Marius stood near the hearth and looked at the mantel where a locket lay. "That's a pretty thing," he said. "Belonged to the lady, did it?" Elias nodded. It found its way back. Marius's eyes softened. Sometimes the sea remembers where she took something from." When they left, Mrs. Penfold touched Elias's sleeve. "There will be a fair next week. You should come, Mr. Hart. Bring a basket. Bring a smile." After they had gone, the house settled into a good hush. Elias went from room to room with a small notebook, making a list of what needed doing. The west gutter half loose. The library window stiff in its frame. He liked the list. It made the house feel like a friend with practical needs, not a mystery with long teeth. In the afternoon, he trimmed the overgrown roses. A thorn nicked his finger and he laughed at the sting. When the shadows grew long, he walked to the headland and stood above the narrow stair leading to the cave. He spoke to the opening with respect. "Thank you," he said, "for giving back what was not yours." The sea swelled like a chest that had decided it did not need to hold its tears anymore. On the way home, he met Wilkes, the lighthouse keeper. Wilkes tipped his cap. "Light burns steady. You look like a man whose thoughts are kinder now." Elias lifted his basket. "I am," he said. That evening, he lit lamps in 5 rooms instead of 1. The house glowed. By the fire, he read a book of poems. The locket lay on the mantel, its secret changed, the painted face gone, replaced by an engraving of 2 waves beneath a rising moon. He opened it, feeling the metal in his palm. "I will keep you here," he said, "where people laugh, where music is played." Days made a small necklace around the week. Elias strung them one by one: work, bread, music, sleep. He fixed the gutter, planed the window, and set the stones of the garden wall back into a truer line. One evening he thought he saw a woman at the far turn of the path, a figure in a pale dress. He did not follow. He lifted his hand, and the figure lifted hers back, not as a wave but as an answer, before the curve of the path took her away. The fair came. Banners hung like bright birds. Elias bought sugar cakes, won a blue feather by accident, and tucked it into his hat. He listened to an old man tell a story of how the sea bit a ship in two, and then apologized with a long, calm summer. But sometimes love makes the sea ashamed, the old man said, and then even a wave will bow. At the end of the day, Marius drew Elias aside and gave him something wrapped in sailcloth. Inside lay a small brass token, marked with 2 crossing lines. On the back, a single letter. A. Alaric, Elias said softly. Marius nodded. Some things come back the long way. Tides have their own roads. Summer came. The roses shook out their first bright skirts. Swallows drew dark stitches in the sky. Graywatch's windows stood open, and music spilled out. Children made a game of dashing up the path, tapping the gate and fleeing with joyful shrieks. Elias began to leave a jar of sweets by the post with a note. 1 each. The jar was never emptied beyond reason. A letter came from a cousin, asking if Elias meant to return to the city. He wrote back about the air and the light, about mending what is bent but not broken. At the end he wrote, I have found a home. The sea is kind now. He sealed it with wax, pressing the old brass token into it. On an evening when the first clouds of winter appeared, a soft knock sounded at the door. A woman stood there with 2 small girls. We were told, she began unsure, that there might be work, and maybe a warm room for a week. There is work, Elias said, and there are rooms. Come in. He took their coats. There is a piano, he said to the girls. It likes to be played with clean hands. He set 3 more places at the table and told a story. When the girls were asleep, their mother sat by the fire. You are a kind man, she said. I am a man who was helped by a house, Elias answered. It would be rude not to be kind in return. Snow came one night soft and white. Elias and the girls skated in their socks across the polished floor while their mother's laugh escaped her hands. When the snow melted, Elias set his hands to the earth, planting thyme and lavender. He took the brass token and the locket to the church. He set the token on the last pew. For the sea to remember, he said. He set the locket on the altar rail. For the land to keep. Years do clever work. The girls grew and left, and Elias stood on the cliff and waved and did not feel abandoned. He felt the small, good hurt of a chapter ending on its right page. In the late afternoon of an early spring, he went to the balcony. The sea lay still, like a mirror that chooses mercy. He heard a footstep behind him, the soft kind that kindness makes. He did not turn. Thank you, he said to the air, which smelled for a heartbeat of salt and roses. A single piano note sounded from the parlor. He went inside and answered with a second note, then a third. The house listened. The sea answered with a sigh so gentle it could have been the breath of a sleeper far away. That night Elias walked through the rooms, ensuring all was well, windows latched, fire banked. He straightened a chair that had nothing wrong with it. It is a kind of prayer to look closely at what is well. In the study, he touched the empty wooden box on the shelf. The wood was cool but not cold. Sleep, he told it. From his window, the sea lay black as silk. The world had learned its quiet thoroughly. At the edge of sleep he heard it, the sea speaking in its new tongue. Not a warning, not a demand, a hush, a blessing, a hush. When morning came, he woke and stood at the open door with his first cup of tea. Mist lay in the low places like folded linen. He spoke aloud, lightly, to the air, the house, and the day. What shall we mend first? The question made him laugh. The sea did not answer in words. It lifted and fell in a breath that matched his own. Behind him, The piano gave one soft sound for no reason other than contentment. Elias turned back into the house. He set his cup down and opened the windows to let in the morning. He picked up his tools. He began again, and the sea, old, vast, forgiven, fell silent and stayed so, a faithful quiet that reached from the foot of the cliffs to the far bright line where sky and water are married by light. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story touched your heart, please consider liking and subscribing for more tales of healing and hope.